In the heart of a bustling city where skyscrapers pierced the clouds and dreams were as big as the horizon, there lived a woman whose name was whispered with admiration in boardrooms and coffee shops alike. Her name was Dr. Maya Rivers, a self-made entrepreneur who had climbed mountains most people didn't even dare to look at. Born into modest beginnings, Maya grew up watching her parents work tirelessly to make ends meet. From an early age, she understood that success wasn't handed to anyone. It had to be earned through grit, determination, and unwavering belief in oneself. Maya's journey wasn't easy. As a young black girl growing up in a neighborhood where opportunities often felt scarce, she faced challenges that could have easily discouraged her. But instead of letting circumstances define her, she used them as fuel for her ambitions. She excelled in school, earning scholarships that eventually led her to Harvard University, a place she once thought existed only in books or movies. There, surrounded by some of the brightest minds from around the world, Maya discovered her passion for technology and innovation. After graduating at the top of her class, Maya decided to take a leap of faith. She founded her own tech startup, determined to create solutions that would improve lives. At first, it seemed like an impossible dream. The hours were long, the rejections were many, and the risks were high, but Maya refused to give up. Slowly, but surely her hard work began to pay off. Her company introduced groundbreaking software that streamlined operations for businesses across industries. Clients flocked to her services, investors took notice, and within 6 years, what started as a small idea in her tiny apartment became a multi-million-dollar empire. Despite her meteoric rise, Maya never forgot where she came from. She made it a point to hire diverse teams, mentor aspiring entrepreneurs, and advocate for inclusion in spaces traditionally dominated by a select few. People admired not just her intelligence and business acumen, but also her humility and kindness. To those who knew her, Maya wasn't just a successful CEO. She was a role model, someone who showed that no obstacle was insurmountable if you stayed true to your values. On this particular morning, Maya woke up feeling optimistic. It was one of those days when everything seemed to fall into place. After reviewing reports from her team and finalizing plans for an upcoming product launch, she decided to step out for a quick errand. Dressed in a sleek navy blue suit paired with gold jewelry, she exuded confidence and professionalism. Her heels clicked rhythmically against the pavement as she walked toward the bank, a building she frequented due to its proximity to her office. The bank itself was impressive, with glass doors reflecting the sunlight and a polished interior that screamed sophistication. For years, Maya had trusted this institution with her company's finances. Millions of dollars flowed through their accounts each month, funding payroll, investments, and expansions. She considered herself not just a customer, but a valued partner. So when she entered the branch that day, she expected nothing more than a routine transaction, a withdrawal to cover some personal expenses. As she approached the teller counter, Maya greeted the staff warmly, exchanging pleasantries before pulling out her identification card. With practiced efficiency, she filled out the necessary paperwork and requested a withdrawal of $50,000. It wasn't an extraordinary amount given the scale of her wealth, but it was significant enough to require managerial approval. Still, Maya didn't think twice about it. She had done this countless times before without incident. What she didn't anticipate, however, was the shift in atmosphere that followed. The teller behind the counter hesitated, glancing nervously over her shoulder. A few seconds later, a man appeared, Greg, the branch manager. He was middle-aged, dressed sharply in a suit, and carried himself with an air of authority. Yet, almost immediately, Maya noticed something unsettling in his demeanor. His eyes scanned her appearance, lingering perhaps a second too long, as though trying to reconcile the image of the confident woman standing before him with whatever preconceived notions he held about clients like her. Greg asked for additional verification, despite Maya having already provided all required documents. His tone was polite but laced with skepticism, as if questioning whether she truly belonged in the space. Other customers in line began to take notice, their curiosity piqued by the unfolding interaction. Some shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension brewing while others watched silently, unsure of how to react. For Maya, the moment was jarring. She had spent years proving herself in rooms where she was underestimated simply because of her gender or race. Each time she rose above it, refusing to let ignorance dim her shine. But standing there in a bank that benefited immensely from her business, she couldn't help but feel a familiar pang of frustration. This wasn't just about money. It was about being seen, respected, and treated fairly. And yet here she was, facing yet another reminder that the world still had a long way to go. Little did Greg, or anyone else in the room, realize that this seemingly ordinary transaction was about to spiral into something far greater. What happened next would not only change Maya's life forever, but also spark conversations that echoed far beyond the walls of that bank. The air in the bank grew heavy as Greg, the branch manager, stepped forward. His presence seemed to command attention, but his demeanor carried an undercurrent of discomfort that was hard to ignore. Maya stood calmly, her posture upright and confident, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She had been through countless transactions at this very bank, always treated with professionalism, until now. As Greg began speaking, his tone shifted subtly, laced with a skepticism that felt both unnecessary and unwarranted. "Are you sure this is your account?" he asked, his voice carrying a hint of doubt. The question hung in the air like a challenge, one that Maya hadn't anticipated on such a routine day. Without missing a beat, she responded firmly, "Yes, it's my account. I've provided all the necessary documentation." Her words were measured, her tone polite but firm. Yet instead of moving forward with the transaction, Greg pressed further. He glanced down at the paperwork in his hand, flipping through pages unnecessarily as if searching for discrepancies that didn't exist. Then came another question. "Can you confirm the source of these funds?" It was a loaded inquiry, one that implied suspicion rather than curiosity. Maya's jaw tightened ever so slightly, but she maintained her composure. "These are personal funds," she replied, her voice steady. "I'm withdrawing money from my own account, which I've held here for years." But Greg wasn't satisfied. Instead of accepting her explanation, he leaned in slightly, lowering his voice just enough for Maya to hear him clearly. "You understand we have protocols in place," he said, almost dismissively. "People sometimes try to access accounts they don't own. We need to be cautious." The implication stung. It wasn't subtle, nor was it accidental. In those few words, Maya heard what he wasn't saying outright. "You don't belong here." For 7 agonizing minutes, the interaction dragged on. Each passing second felt heavier than the last. Other customers waiting in line exchanged uneasy glances, some whispering quietly while others simply stared. The once bustling energy of the bank had transformed into palpable tension. Everyone could sense that something was wrong, though few understood the full weight of what was unfolding. Maya, however, knew exactly what was happening. This wasn't about protocol or caution. It was about bias. She had seen it before, in meetings where her ideas were dismissed until repeated by a white colleague, in networking events where introductions turned awkward because someone assumed she couldn't possibly hold the title she claimed. But this was different. This was blatant disrespect masquerading as policy enforcement, and it was unacceptable. Despite her growing frustration, Maya remained composed. She answered every intrusive question calmly, presenting her identification again and explaining her request patiently. Inside, though, anger simmered. How dare they treat her this way? She wasn't just any customer. She was one of their most valuable clients. Her company's deposits alone kept this branch thriving, funding its operations and ensuring its success. And yet none of that mattered in this moment. All they saw was a black woman standing confidently in a space they likely believed she didn't belong. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Greg made his position clear. He wouldn't authorize the withdrawal. Not today, not without jumping through hoops that no wealthy client should reasonably face. The finality of his decision hit Maya like a wave crashing against a rock. For a split second, She considered walking away, letting the humiliation wash over her in silence. After all, she had endured worse indignities in her life. But then something inside her shifted. Years of resilience, determination, and advocacy kicked in. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every Black professional who had faced similar treatment. It was about every young girl being told, directly or indirectly, that she didn't deserve a seat at the table. Maya realized that staying silent would only perpetuate the cycle. If she wanted change, if she truly believed in the values she preached, she had to act. With quiet fury burning in her chest, Maya reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. Her fingers moved swiftly across the screen as she dialed her corporate legal team. While the call connected, she locked eyes with Greg, refusing to look away. When the voice on the other end answered, she spoke clearly and concisely, summarizing the situation without raising her voice. "I'm at the bank right now," she said. "They're refusing to process a legitimate withdrawal despite having all proper documentation. This isn't acceptable." As she spoke, Greg's expression shifted from smug assurance to visible unease. He likely hadn't expected her to escalate the matter so quickly. Or at all. Most people in her position might have walked away, embarrassed or defeated. But Maya wasn't most people. Once she ended the call, she addressed Greg directly, her voice cutting through the tense atmosphere like a knife. "Do you know whose account funds nearly half of your branch's operations?" she asked, her tone icy yet controlled. "Mine. Do you realize I'm the CEO of one of your biggest corporate clients? Because if you don't, let me clarify. I am Dr. Maya Rivers, and starting now, we will no longer do business with this bank." The words landed with precision, each syllable dripping with authority. A hush fell over the room as everyone processed what had just happened. Customers stopped pretending not to listen, turning their full attention to the scene unfolding before them. Some nodded approvingly, while others looked shocked. Even the tellers behind the counter exchanged wide-eyed glances, unsure of how to react. For Greg, the realization dawned too late. He opened his mouth to respond, perhaps to apologize or backtrack, but Maya didn't give him the chance. Before leaving, she paused briefly at the customer feedback desk. With deliberate movements, she filled out a formal complaint, detailing the discriminatory behavior she had experienced. She included specific names, dates, and descriptions, ensuring there would be no room for denial later. As she handed the form to the receptionist, she added, "Make sure this reaches the highest level of management. They'll want to address this immediately." By the time Maya stepped out of the bank, the weight of the encounter still lingered, but she felt a strange sense of clarity. What had started as a simple errand had turned into something far greater, a moment of reckoning not just for her, but for the institution that had underestimated her. Little did she know, the impact of her actions would ripple far beyond the confines of that single branch, sparking conversations and inspiring others to demand better. As Maya stepped out of the bank, her heart was still racing, but her mind was sharp and focused. She knew that what had just happened wasn't an isolated incident. It was a reflection of a much larger problem. Discrimination, whether subtle or overt, had followed her throughout her life, and she had learned to navigate it with grace and resilience. But today, something inside her had shifted. Today, she decided not to let it slide. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about setting an example for others who might find themselves in similar situations. The moment she walked outside, the crisp air hit her face, offering a brief sense of clarity amidst the storm brewing within her. She paused for a second, taking a deep breath before pulling out her phone again. Her fingers moved quickly as she drafted a series of messages to her team. First, she informed her CFO about the decision to sever ties with the bank, a move that would send shockwaves through the financial institution. Then she reached out to her PR manager, instructing them to prepare a statement addressing the incident. Maya understood the power of storytelling and knew this moment could amplify voices that often went unheard. Within minutes, word of the confrontation began spreading like wildfire. Customers who had witnessed the exchange inside the bank took to social media, sharing their accounts of what they had seen. Someone captured a photo of Maya standing confidently at the teller counter, her expression unyielding despite the tension in the room. Another recorded a short video clip of her calmly addressing Greg before walking away. These snippets, though brief, painted a vivid picture of courage and defiance. Hashtags like #respect Black CEOs and accountability now began trending almost instantly. Back inside the bank, chaos erupted. Employees scrambled to contain the situation, realizing too late that this wasn't just a minor hiccup, it was a full-blown crisis. Greg, the branch manager, looked visibly shaken as he retreated to his office, likely hoping to avoid further scrutiny. Meanwhile, higher-ups at the corporate level were inundated with calls from concerned partners and clients. One by one, they pieced together the severity of the situation. Dr. Maya Rivers, a powerhouse CEO whose company contributed significantly to their bottom line, had just publicly denounced their branch and them. By early afternoon, news outlets picked up the story. Reporters flocked to the scene, eager to get first-hand accounts from witnesses. Interviews with customers revealed a mix of outrage and admiration. "It was humiliating to watch," said one woman who had been waiting in. They treated her like she didn't belong there, but anyone could see how composed and professional she was. Another added, "She handled it perfectly. If I were in her shoes, I don't think I'd have been able to stay so calm." Maya, meanwhile, remained unfazed by the sudden attention. She spent the rest of the day fielding calls from journalists, business partners, and even fellow CEOs who wanted to express their support. Instead of shying away, she embraced the opportunity to shed light on the broader issue of systemic bias. During one particularly poignant conversation with a reporter, she said, "This isn't about one bad manager or one unfortunate interaction. It's about patterns of behavior that marginalize people based on race, gender, or background. What happened today isn't unique to me. It happens every single day to countless individuals who are judged not by their achievements, but by stereotypes." Her words resonated deeply, striking a chord with audiences across the country. Social media platforms buzzed with discussions about racial bias in banking and other industries. People shared personal stories of being treated unfairly because of their identity, creating a groundswell of solidarity. For many, Maya's actions served as a catalyst, a reminder that speaking up, even when it's uncomfortable, can lead to meaningful change. As the hours passed, pressure mounted on the bank to respond. Executives issued a public apology, acknowledging the incident and promising to investigate thoroughly. They vowed to implement reforms aimed at preventing similar occurrences in the future. Yet, for many, the apology felt hollow. Words alone wouldn't erase decades of systemic inequities. Actions would be required, and Maya intended to hold them accountable. That evening, Maya sat in her home office, surrounded by papers and documents detailing her next steps. She drafted a letter addressed to the bank's board of directors, outlining specific demands: mandatory anti-bias training for all employees, transparent reporting on discriminatory incidents, and the immediate termination of Greg. She also included a proposal for partnering with organizations dedicated to promoting diversity and inclusion in finance. It wasn't enough to punish one individual. Real change required systemic overhaul. But Maya didn't stop there. Inspired by the overwhelming response to her story, she decided to take things a step further. She announced the launch of Equity First, a nonprofit initiative aimed at combating workplace discrimination and empowering underrepresented entrepreneurs. The organization would provide resources, mentorship, and advocacy for marginalized professionals seeking to break into industries where they were often overlooked or undervalued. "If we want to create a more equitable world," Maya explained during a live-streamed announcement, "we need to start by addressing the barriers that hold people back." The announcement sparked widespread acclaim. Corporate leaders reached out to offer support, pledging donations and partnerships to help bring Maya's vision to life. Community members expressed gratitude, thanking her for using her platform to drive change. Even critics of the banking industry praised her boldness, acknowledging that moments like these were necessary to push society forward. For Maya, the whirlwind of events reinforced her belief in the importance of standing up for what's right. While the incident at the bank had been painful, it had also reminded her of her purpose: to inspire others to challenge injustice and demand better. As she reflected on the day's events, she felt a renewed sense of determination. This wasn't the end of the road, it was the beginning of something bigger, and she was ready to lead the charge. By the time night fell, the story had reached millions of people worldwide. Conversations about equity, inclusion, and accountability dominated headlines, dinners, and classrooms. Maya's name became synonymous with courage and resilience, a testament to the power of speaking truth to power. Little did she know, the ripple effects of her actions would continue to grow, shaping policies, inspiring movements, and leaving an indelible mark on generations to come. The days following the incident at the bank felt like a whirlwind for Maya. What had started as a personal confrontation quickly escalated into a national conversation about discrimination, accountability, and systemic bias. The story of how Dr. Maya Rivers stood up to a discriminatory manager spread far beyond the walls of that single branch, reaching people from all walks of life. Social media platforms buzzed with hashtags like Respect Black CEOs and Equity in Action, while news outlets covered every angle of the unfolding drama. For many, Maya's actions served as both an inspiration and a wake-up call. The bank itself scrambled to contain the fallout. Within hours of Maya's public declaration, corporate executives convened emergency meetings to discuss damage control. They understood the gravity of the situation. Losing a high-profile client like Maya wasn't just bad for business, it was a PR nightmare. Customers began questioning their own experiences with the institution, and corporate partners threatened to sever ties unless drastic changes were made. The pressure mounted rapidly, forcing the bank to act swiftly. By the end of the week, Greg, the branch manager who had denied Maya's withdrawal, was terminated. His dismissal was announced in a carefully worded statement that emphasized the bank's commitment to zero tolerance for discrimination. While some viewed this as a step in the right direction, others remained skeptical. Firing one individual wouldn't erase decades of ingrained biases within the system. Maya knew this better than anyone, which is why she refused to let the bank off the hook so easily. Her demands went beyond punitive measures against Greg. She insisted on structural reforms that would address the root causes of discrimination. Mandatory anti-bias training for all employees was non-negotiable. Transparent reporting mechanisms needed to be established, allowing customers to report incidents without fear of retaliation. Additionally, Maya pushed for partnerships with organizations that promoted diversity and inclusion in finance, ensuring that marginalized communities had access to resources and opportunities traditionally denied to them. The bank, eager to salvage its reputation, agreed to implement these changes. Executives publicly pledged millions of dollars toward initiatives aimed at fostering equity, including scholarships for underrepresented students pursuing careers in finance and mentorship programs for minority entrepreneurs. While Maya acknowledged these efforts as a start, she made it clear that real change would require sustained action, not just performative gestures. Meanwhile, the ripple effects of Maya's bold stand extended far beyond the banking industry. Other corporations took notice, realizing they too were vulnerable to similar scrutiny if they failed to address issues of bias and exclusion within their ranks. CEOs across sectors reached out to Maya, seeking advice on how to create more inclusive workplaces. Some even invited her to speak at leadership summits, where she shared her insights on the importance of representation and accountability. One such event took place at a prestigious conference center in New York City. Dressed in a striking red suit, Maya walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. The audience, composed of executives, entrepreneurs, and activists, hung on her every word as she delivered a powerful keynote address. Discrimination doesn't exist in a vacuum, she began. It thrives in silence, in the spaces where we choose not to ask hard questions or challenge the status quo. Today, I'm asking you to do both. She went on to share her own experiences, recounting moments when she had been underestimated or dismissed because of her race and gender. Her vulnerability resonated deeply with the crowd, many of whom nodded in agreement or wiped away tears. But Maya didn't stop at sharing her struggles. She offered solutions. She spoke about the need for diverse hiring practices, equitable pay structures, and leadership teams that reflected the communities they served. Change isn't easy, she admitted. It requires courage, humility, and a willingness to listen. But if we don't take these steps now, we risk perpetuating the same cycles of inequality that have held us back for generations. Her speech left an indelible mark on everyone present. One attendee, a senior executive from a major tech company, approached her afterward and confessed, "Your words reminded me of why I got into this work in the first place. We've been complacent for too long, and it's time to do better." Others echoed similar sentiments, pledging to implement concrete changes within their organizations. Back home, Maya continued to channel her energy into Equity First, the nonprofit initiative she had launched in the wake of the bank incident. The organization quickly gained traction, attracting support from influential figures and institutions alike. Corporations donated funds, volunteers signed up to help, and community leaders partnered with Maya to expand the program's reach. Together, they created workshops, webinars, and networking events designed to empower underrepresented professionals and equip them with the tools they needed to succeed. One particularly impactful project involved partnering with historically Black colleges and universities, HBCUs, to provide students with internships and job placement opportunities in industries where they were often overlooked. Maya worked closely with university presidents and corporate sponsors to ensure the program was sustainable and effective. When the first cohort of participants graduated and secured positions at top companies, Maya couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. These young men and women weren't just building careers, they were breaking barriers. As the weeks turned into months, the impact of Maya's actions became increasingly evident. Banks across the country reviewed their policies, implementing reforms aimed at addressing racial bias in customer service. Anti-discrimination training sessions became mandatory in countless workplaces, sparking difficult but necessary conversations. And perhaps most importantly, individuals who had once felt powerless found their voices, inspired by Maya's example to speak out against injustice. For Maya, the journey was far from over. While she celebrated the progress that had been made, she remained acutely aware of the work still ahead. Discrimination wasn't something that could be eradicated overnight. It required constant vigilance and effort. Yet she found solace in knowing that her actions had ignited a movement, one that showed no signs of slowing down. Every time someone reached out to thank her, a young entrepreneur inspired to pursue their dreams, a parent grateful for paving the way for their child, or a colleague emboldened to demand better, Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about creating a world where everyone, regardless of their background, could thrive without having to prove their worth. And as she looked toward the future, she knew that the fight for equity and justice was one she would continue to champion, no matter the odds. Months had passed since the day Maya walked out of that bank, but the echoes of her actions continued to reverberate far beyond what anyone could have anticipated. What began as a single act of defiance against discrimination had grown into a movement, a call to action for individuals and institutions alike to confront systemic inequities head-on. For Maya, this wasn't just about personal vindication. It was about creating lasting change, one step at a time. The ripple effects of her courage were undeniable. Banks across the country scrambled to review their policies, implementing reforms aimed at addressing racial bias in customer service. Anti-discrimination training became mandatory in countless workplaces, sparking difficult but necessary conversations. Employees who had once stayed silent about their experiences now felt empowered to speak up, knowing they weren't alone. And perhaps most importantly, underrepresented communities saw Maya's story as proof that standing firm in the face of injustice could lead to meaningful progress. But for Maya, the work didn't stop there. Her nonprofit initiative, Equity First, had blossomed into something far greater than she had initially envisioned. The organization became a beacon of hope for marginalized professionals seeking mentorship, resources, and opportunities to break into industries where they were often overlooked or undervalued. Through partnerships with corporations, universities, and community organizations, Maya created programs that provided tangible support. Whether it was funding scholarships for students from underrepresented backgrounds, hosting workshops on financial literacy, or connecting entrepreneurs with investors willing to take a chance on fresh ideas. One of Equity First's flagship projects involved collaborating with historically Black colleges and universities, HBCUs, to bridge the gap between education and employment. Maya worked tirelessly alongside university presidents, corporate leaders, and alumni networks to design internship and job placement programs tailored specifically for HBCU students. These initiatives didn't just open doors, they ensured those doors stayed open, offering participants ongoing mentorship and career development long after graduation. When the first cohort of students secured positions at Fortune 500 companies, Maya couldn't help but feel a deep sense of fulfillment. Each success story was a testament to the power of perseverance and collective effort. Beyond her professional endeavors, Maya found herself increasingly sought after as a speaker and advocate. From conferences in bustling cities to intimate gatherings in small towns, she traveled extensively to share her message of resilience, accountability, and inclusion. Her speeches resonated deeply with audiences because they were rooted in authenticity. She never shied away from discussing her own struggles, the moments when she doubted herself, the times she faced rejection, not because of her abilities but because of preconceived notions about who she was. Yet, through every challenge, she emerged stronger, using her experiences to fuel her mission. During one particularly memorable event, held at a global leadership summit, Maya stood before an audience of thousands. The room fell silent as she recounted the day at the bank, not just the humiliation she endured but also the clarity that followed. "That moment taught me something important," she said, her voice steady, yet filled with emotion. "It reminded me that change doesn't happen unless we demand it. It doesn't happen unless we're willing to stand up even when it feels uncomfortable. And it certainly doesn't happen unless we hold ourselves and others accountable." Her words struck a chord, prompting a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. Afterward, attendees lined up to thank her, sharing their own stories of struggle and triumph. One woman, a young Latina entrepreneur, approached Maya with tears in her eyes. "Your story gave me the courage to keep going," she said. "I've faced so many no's in my journey, but hearing you talk about pushing through, it made me realize I'm not alone." Moments like these reinforced Maya's belief that representation mattered, not just in boardrooms but in everyday life. As Equity First gained momentum, Maya expanded its reach internationally, partnering with organizations in countries grappling with similar issues of inequality. She understood that discrimination wasn't confined to any one region or industry. It was a global problem requiring collaborative solutions. By fostering cross-cultural dialogue and sharing best practices, she hoped to inspire others to take action in their own communities. Despite her growing influence, Maya remained grounded. She often reflected on her journey, remembering the lessons she had learned along the way. Success, she realized, wasn't measured by titles or accolades. It was defined by the impact one made on the lives of others. Every email from a grateful
mentee, every photo of a smiling student graduating from an HBCU program, and every testimonial from someone inspired to pursue their dreams served as a reminder of why she did what she did. Still, Maya knew the fight was far from over.
While significant strides had been made, systemic inequities persisted. Bias, whether conscious or unconscious, continued to shape decisions in hiring, lending, and leadership. Maya refused to let complacency set in. Instead, she doubled down on her efforts, challenging herself and others to think bigger, dream bolder, and push harder for justice. By the end of the year, Maya's legacy had solidified. She was no longer just a successful CEO or a respected advocate. She was a symbol of resilience and transformation. Her name appeared in headlines alongside discussions about equity and inclusion. Universities invited her to deliver commencement speeches, urging graduates to use their talents to uplift others. Award ceremonies celebrated her contributions to society, recognizing her as a trailblazer who had redefined what it meant to lead with purpose. Yet, for all the recognition she received, Maya's greatest reward came from seeing the tangible difference her work made. A young black man who had attended one of Equity First's workshops sent her a note saying he had landed his dream job at a tech startup. A mother thanked her for helping her daughter secure a scholarship to study engineering. A group of women, entrepreneurs, credited her mentorship program with giving them the confidence to launch their businesses. These stories reminded Maya that true success wasn't about personal victories. It was about lifting others as you climbed. Looking ahead, Maya envisioned a world where no one would have to endure the indignities she had faced at that bank. She dreamed of a future where diversity wasn't just tolerated but celebrated, where inclusion wasn't an afterthought, but a cornerstone of every institution. She knew achieving this vision would require patience, persistence, and unwavering determination. But she was ready. In quiet moments, Maya often thought about the little girl she used to be, the one who dared to dream big, despite the odds stacked against her. That girl had grown into a woman who shattered barriers, challenged norms, and inspired countless others to do the same. As she looked toward the horizon, Maya smiled, knowing her journey was far from over. There were still mountains to climb, battles to fight, and hearts to touch. But with each step forward, she carried the unwavering belief that change was possible and that together we could build a better, fairer world.